So what is power really? And this is very, very important, I think, in today's global context, where we are talking about a polycrisis. So what's a polycrisis that's happening today? It is the AI disruption, right? There is all this geopolitical tension that is happening, climate change issues, and there is also growing mistrust by the public. And so what's happening, there is a paradox that we are observing with respect to power. On one hand, it is highly visible, right? You can see it's highly visible, especially in the political context, and we can also see that it is deeply misused. There is this disconnect between what power looks like and what we hope it could be. So can you see from this room itself, there is this disconnect. Now, ideally, in an ideal world, to close this gap is what we all wish for, what we all want, and that is where we need to reimagine leadership. As Binu was saying, reimagining leadership. So I was discussing this with my son, my 14-year-old son. I was just asking him, does this make sense to you? And I'll be sharing an example that I shared with him right away. And he told me, Amma, that example, I'm not sure whether, because he's from this current generation, it's like I was not, there when that happened. So I'm not sure if I can relate to that. But you know what people can really relate to? Lion King. Yeah. So he was saying that if you really look at this, the gap is the difference between positional to personal power. So although in this case between Scar and Simba, Simba does get the positional power, but he uses power in a different way through all of that we had written at what we wish for, empathy, through kindness, through bringing the people together. Let's explore a little bit more. And I wanted to share this example. All of you know about this, right? I mean, in 2003, February, the world watched in horror, right? As the Columbia shuttle broke apart while re-entering the atmosphere. And look at these beautiful, 7 astronauts. They were all killed. And the underlying reason? So it's actually a very well-studied case. And what they found was that actually, technically, it is an error. There was this large piece of insulating foam which dislodged from the shuttle's external tank, and it damaged one of the wings, causing this disaster. Now, can you imagine an operation like this? Why was this not predicted or detected earlier? Why did this even happen? So a lot of, things were overlooked, leading to such a major disaster. And so I wanted to highlight the fact that this happens not just for this particular case. And we all know, I'm from science and I have colleagues from science here, and whichever industry we are from, we know that sometimes it's like there is this clash between experts working or at the operational level versus the senior leadership or the decision-making level. I'm just going to have you to all do arm wrestling. Seriously. I'm asking you to do this. So put all your might, Sven, maybe you can go a little easy. Or maybe, for churn, maybe it's oh yeah, the 2 guys can do. So what you do is, in this time, just look at each other, make that contact. So you're not you are competing, but make that contact, eye contact, the connection, and just do it for fun. Okay, everyone, back to the session. Okay, so this was just an activity because, Sven, yeah. What was your experience doing this with me?
It was much harder than I thought it was.
Yeah. See, so that's the thing. And sometimes we underestimate each other's power, right? We underestimate, but I did give you a tough, yeah. Yeah. So it's also about actually, so that's where I'm heading to, right? Because sometimes it's all about, we can say it is all the outside, the muscles and everything. Yeah, to a great extent, that is true. It's very physical. But then power is actually ultimately a very inner thing. It's what you ultimately believe about yourself. And let me share that more through my own journey, actually. So a little bit about myself now. So first and foremost, yes, as Binu said, I did get my PhD in cell and molecular biology from Roswell Park Cancer Institute. This is one of the top cancer institutes in the US. It's called differently right now. So in 2006, I had a PhD with the Dean's Award in cell and molecular biology. And this was actually a dream that I had from the time I was 15 to be a scientist. And, till that point in my life, I just felt that if you focused very hard, if you worked very hard, you could just do it. And in 2001, when I went to the US, I was the first girl from my entire family, from my entire neighborhood, who went to the US to do it. And I still remember sitting on the plane and thinking, oh my God, I'm going to this new country where I don't know anybody. There were no cell phones then. There were no credit cards. I mean, few people, the rich, had credit cards. So I was traveling with traveler's checks, and I didn't even know how to contact my parents to let them know that I reached US, right? So it was like it was so different back then. I'm very thankful to my parents for the fact that there was this element called trust. They trusted that I'll be fine, which even today, even if we give our cell phones to our children, we keep worrying about them. So this is how it went for me initially. And then from later on, I really wanted to get into drug discovery. And I got into it, and I came back to India, intentional choice to come back, be closer to home. And so I joined AstraZeneca, and I worked as a drug discovery scientist for a couple of years. But what happened then was something that I did not anticipate. So my career and everything was going very well. I was already married by then. And something happened that challenged my thinking. So till then I was like, oh yeah, everything happens, if you plan and all that. But then life presented a different situation. It was like some plans don't work, and that plan was family planning. So my husband actually was sailing around the time, so we had a big long distance marriage. Again, people wonder, how did you survive, this marriage? 10 years we were having a long distance literally. But those days, again, I think we had trust. We had those elements of trust, and we had, belief and faith that things will work out. But actually what did not work out for us was because of the distance, the time that I wanted to start a family, I was not able to. So I was in Bangalore then, again, a little bit on my own. And so it was a very tough time for me to go through the treatments when he comes. It was just not an enjoyable time. Finally, at some point, I felt that, okay, as a biologist, maybe this is the time that I have to make that decision because, technology changes, but our biology has not changed, right? Yeah, so many years. So I just felt if I really want to pursue motherhood, then this is the time. So I left my job. It was a very tough decision because I had sacrificed a lot to get my PhD. It was a very, very difficult situation. My parents were also not happy. My husband was not happy. They're like, why are you doing this? But something inside me said that I must. So what happened was, okay, years later, I did, of course, the positive thing is that I did give birth to my child. And during that time of career break is when I gave birth to another child, the book that Vinu was talking about, Rumi's Foodies. So it was a very productive time in a different way. I wrote and published a cookbook that also got an award, right? So this, I must say, was one of the most grounding experiences in my life, because previously as a scientist and, as a young person, I just thought you can just get everything you want, right? But this was a grounding experience, and also maybe the first exploration of human potential for me, because I did not know that I could write a cookbook. After this career break and getting back to the workforce, I was going through things that I've never experienced before. Imposter syndrome or whatever, all of that. But one thing, I went through that dip, but only until I realized that I'm not alone in my journey, right? I just came across so many women, and especially talented, brilliant women in science. Maybe for them, it's not a career break, but who experience a slowdown, who experience confusion. I've done all of this, but now where is my life headed? How do I manage? How can I be there more for my children? All of those questions happen. So this is actually a UNESCO study which showed or associated it with the leaky pipe and stem, the first picture, right? Wherein there is a great proportion of people or equal number of women who join the workforce and they drop. And these are some other stats which say that even today, although significant improvements have happened, the women in science numbers are less. So what I did, coming back to my topic of power, right? I was in this situation for some time. Then I felt I wanted to change it. I did not have positional power. I did not have a title. It was impossible for me to have a title when I restarted. But I was like, how can I do something about the situation? So that is where my journey started, in a different route. And that is through creating the change we wish to see. Again, this is like a quote that we often see, be the change you want to see in the world, right? But is it easy to do that? It's not. It can only happen through personal power. And it changed for me the time when I became a voice for women in science. And I started talking more and sharing these experiences. I had the opportunity to attend the Gender Summit 2017 in Tokyo. And to my surprise, it was an Asia Pacific summit, huge summit, lots of scientists, policymakers, stakeholders from different parts of the world. And from Singapore, it was just me. It was just me. And I was like so fascinated by all the sharings, because it was not just about promoting women in science, it was also about looking at research and innovation through a gender lens, right? How can pharma companies produce better drugs if you bring in the gender angle, right? In the experiments and everything. So it was something very fascinating. And that inspired me to come back to Singapore and start creating a movement. And not from an activist point of view at all, but from a research and innovation point of view. What can we do about this leaky pipe and doing research in a better way? And that led me to go to Gender Summit in 2018. I spoke there, I spoke about the initiatives in Singapore. It's a grassroots level efforts, like the collective efforts by so many volunteers, women in science volunteers. And then that led me to partner with my co-lead, Dr. Vandana Ramachandran. And we actually pulled through this major event that happened in 2019, Gender Summit, which was, again, Binu was there as well. So it was a fantastic experience. So it was like suddenly I felt that, yeah, it is possible to do something. You don't need to have title to do it. You just need to have a vision. You need to have the will to do it. You can bring people together and do it. But then it looks like a big success story. But I went through an anticlimax right after doing this. Yeah. And that was, as I was doing this event, I observed one thing, that some people are doing it not because they're passionate about the topic, because it's just a CSR checkbox for them. And I felt at many levels excluded. Even being the organizer myself, I felt so excluded myself, not just because of the gender, but because of title. Not that the men were excluding me, but the women were also excluding me. So I realized that, oh my God, the problem is again much more complex. It is not just one angle of making people more aware of what the gender bias. It is so much more. It's about inclusion. It is about really embracing diverse voices and professional levels, right? Are people inclusive of professional levels, really? Yeah, so there was this newspaper article that I wrote and I published. I mean, the article got published, my name was not there in the article as the organizer. And I'm like, 2 years I put in sweat and tears into this. So this is the reality. So it was an anticlimax, it was a shock for me. And that is the time I started realizing, while policies are very, very important, it takes time to get implemented. What can I do for myself and so many people, not just the women, even men in science, who struggle to be heard, who struggle to have clarity, who struggle to move forward with conviction? What can you do about it? So that is how I transitioned into coaching and also speaking, right? Because it's a different shift in perspective that needed to be created through my experiences. First and foremost is presence. Okay, so presence, when we talk about presence, just think about what comes to your mind, right? So many different things again about presence. And today what I'm going to talk about is presence at 2 levels. One is about our own presence, how we appear, our body language, what it conveys. And the second presence is about being in the moment, right? So these are the 2 things that I would like you to draw your attention to. So think about it. Is presence just being in the room? You're all present here. You're all present here. But it's really about being felt in the room. That is really the ultimate thing. It's about being felt. I remember asking my public speaking coach, Coach, can you help me deepen my voice? Can you help me make it more masculine? And he was shocked. Why would you want to do that? So because I want to sound powerful, my voice is too sweet and too, he was like, your voice is fine as is. Yeah. But it took me a while to embrace I used to feel this cringe whenever I heard myself speak. Can you imagine the amount of trashing and bashing sometimes we can do to ourselves? So that's the thing, right? So there's a lot of these things that if we reflect for ourselves, we will be able to identify what are some things that has affected our presence in the past, what have we done about it, and coming to awareness. So it's not just about self-awareness, it's about situational awareness, and not just what I am feeling in this moment, what are you feeling in this moment, because we are constantly making judgments, we are having certain feelings, we are having whatever, it's evoking, but it's also about the awareness of how others are perceiving you. many leaders, especially in science and technology that I've seen, that awareness is lacking because people speak behind their back and they don't know about it. Next is W for willingness. Now, I think this is the most important thing. And as coaches, like Kavita, I know you can agree, right? Because we cannot coach those who are not willing to be coached, right? Because if you believe that I've got it all sorted very well and good, please, that's a great thought to have. But if you really think that no, there is something that I need to change about myself, it is a willingness to listen. It's a willingness to hear other people's perspectives. And I think this matters not just in a professional relationship, it's also in a personal relationship. Are we willing to hear out each other's perspectives? Where are they coming from? And the willingness to change. Am I willing to change for the betterment? So often it so happens that I've also come to a state wherein my willingness to change is very high, but in some relationships you can see there is just no willingness to change at all. So earlier, even my coaches, my clients used to come and ask, teaching about EQ, emotional intelligence, well, very good. But how can I get my boss to think that way? This lesson should be for my boss. He should or she should be taking this. And I was like, there is nothing you can do to change them because they're not seeing it. You need to figure out a way by changing yourself, by being more aware, how can you manage that situation? And trust me, when we are going through this, you'll be like, no, I'm not doing anything wrong. It's about that person. This person is toxic. This environment is toxic. I can't do anything about it. But I've also done that. And I also now, with my awareness and learning, I've come to situations wherein I meet exactly the same kind of people, but I can manage and influence them well. Because of simple human skills, being able to listen to their perspectives. Like for example, when I look at my leader, whichever context, there are people carrying a lot of burdens, right? There are people who have a lot of things on their plate. So if they're coming across as a little bit like that, it is because of the weight they're carrying. What can I do to help them relieve that weight? Can I be a little bit more compassionate? So I no longer look at my leaders like that. I go to them. I'm a coach. I walk in. I'm just a little bit of how is it going for you? And then that's it. Sometimes they just want to be listened to. Who listens to them? Leadership is also a lonely journey. So just flipping these narratives actually can change. So it's about the willingness.